I first realized there was something different about Kieran when he was very young. He took a long time to verbalize. So this was when he was 18 months or so, just barely walking, and we would tuck him into bed and then leave the room. And he would get out of bed and rock himself to sleep. He'd sit against the door and just slam himself into the doors. Wham, 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 until he would fall asleep. Then we would go back into the room and pick him up and tuck him back into bed. And by 3, he was not verbalizing at all. He wasn't speaking. He could say "Mom," and that was about it. So I had him assessed, and he was assessed as developmentally delayed. And they asked me then if I wanted an autism diagnosis, and I really didn't. I didn't want him to have a crutch as he got older. I wanted him to learn to live in the real world and to deal with people, because that's what he's going to have to do as he enters adulthood, is to deal with people. I also didn't want a diagnosis because I didn't care if he had autism. I liked him the way he is. He's my son. He's not my autistic son. He's just Kieran. And I like him. And I didn't want any qualifiers. The whole cure autism, I don't want my son cured. I don't want him changed. I would like to understand why it happens and what causes it and the way that their brains are wired. But as far as this end of the spectrum goes, I'm not looking for a cure. I don't want him changed. So I hesitated to get a diagnosis, the labeling, and all of that goes along with it. But you cannot move a special needs child through the education system without a diagnosis. You have to have one to get an IEP or a 504. And you have to have that to force some of those educators to work with you. Some of them are really empathetic and invested, and they will bend over backwards to help you out. But up to a point, even those guys will have their hands tied by what they have to do as educators. They wouldn't be able to give him a quieter space to take a test in. They're not able to do some of the things that would benefit him without a diagnosis. And some of the teachers just wouldn't want to. They've got a lot of kids, and if you don't have a diagnosis, then really there's nothing they have to do for you, so there's nothing they will do for you. But that is a minority. Most of the teachers I have worked with have really been helpful, but you run into them. You run into a lot of teachers, so you're going to hit those ones that do the minimum. And so we had to get a diagnosis to get his 504, which he currently has. But even then, it is making sure that everything that is listed in the 504 is happening. You really have to stay on top of it. But that's the way it is from day one when you have a special needs child. When he was young, he would strip off his clothes, run naked through the neighborhood. He would wander away from me. He would just use the bathroom in the yard. I would get a lot of criticism from a lot of people, family members, community members, people in the neighborhood. I was going through a divorce, and my ex-husband would use the autism symptoms as proof that I was an unfit mother. It was very difficult. But you just, one step at a time. He is fully dressed. He speaks.
I speak.
He speaks, he does. And he's got a great vocabulary, and he is so intelligent. But that brings its own problems, because on this end of the spectrum with the Asperger's, they are so smart. And so you run into teachers that really aren't knowledgeable about that, and they see the intelligence and they're like, well, he's smart, he should get it.